At 8:28 p.m. on February 4th, 2010, Joseph McStay's phone received a call. It went to voicemail. He never answered. That night, his phone connected to a cell tower near the family's home in Fallbrook, California. Over the next 2 days, relatives tried to reach Joseph and his wife, Summer. The calls went unanswered. When a family member went to check the house, the front door was locked. The family's 2 dogs were in the yard. Food had been left behind inside the home. Joseph McStay, his wife, and their 2 young sons were gone. And after that night, their phones stopped connecting to the network. This is a true horror story. What you're about to hear happened to a real family. The details come from police records, court testimony, and publicly available reporting. Nothing in this story is fictional, and every moment you're about to hear was reconstructed from what investigators later confirmed. So pay attention. Joseph McStay and his wife, Summer, lived in Fallbrook, California, a suburban community in northern San Diego County. They had 2 young sons, Gianni and Joseph Jr. Friends and relatives described them as a close family, focused on work, home life, and raising their children. Joseph ran a small business manufacturing decorative water fountains. Summer worked with him and managed much of the day-to-day logistics. Their lives followed a routine built around work, school, and time at home. In the months before February 2010, the family had been renovating their house. The work was ongoing, but the home was functional. It was the place where they cooked meals, made plans, and spent their evenings together. Fallbrook was quiet. Residential streets, single-family homes, little late-night activity. There was nothing about the area that suggested frequent emergencies or sudden disappearances. On February 4th, 2010, the McStays were believed to be at home. There were no reports of arguments, no calls for help, and no signs that they were preparing to leave town. Their phones showed normal activity leading up to that night. Calls went to voicemail when unanswered. Text messages were sent and received as usual. There was nothing in the phone records that suggested distress or urgency. When relatives later entered the house, they noticed ordinary details left behind. Eggs were still on the kitchen counter. Popcorn bowls were out. Personal belongings remained inside. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared broken or overturned. The home showed no evidence of a hurried departure. Outside the family's house, 2 dogs were in the yard. They were unharmed. They appeared to have been left behind intentionally or without immediate concern. The family's phones continued to ring when called. Voicemail picked up. There were no messages explaining where they had gone or when they would return. At a nearby house, a security camera captured limited footage. The video did not show the family itself. What it did show were tire tracks consistent with a vehicle leaving the McStay driveway. No one in the footage could be identified. No faces or voices, just evidence that a vehicle had been there. As the days passed, the house stayed quiet. No lights turned on or doors opened. No one came back for the dogs. What remained was a home that looked as if it had been paused in the middle of ordinary life. Meals unfinished, plans unspoken, and 4 people who had not been seen since that night. In the hours after February 4th, 2010, family members began trying to reach Joseph McStay. The calls rang. Then they went to voicemail. No one picked up. At first, there was no immediate alarm. Joseph and Summer had traveled before. Friends and relatives considered the possibility that they had left town without notice. As the night passed, more calls were made. Still no response. The next day, the phones continued to behave normally. They rang. Voicemail answered. No messages came back. Some family members believed the McStays may have taken an unplanned trip. Others thought there could be a simple explanation, like a short absence, a missed connection, or a delay in returning calls. But as more time passed, the silence continued. Days went by. Relatives began calling every number they had. Joseph's phone, Summer's phone, the numbers assigned to the children. None of the calls were answered. Phone records later showed that the devices were still connected to nearby cell towers. The phones had not been powered off immediately. They were still registered on the network, but no one responded. With each unanswered call, the situation became harder to explain as a brief trip or a missed communication. Eventually, police were contacted. When investigators entered the McStay home, they did not find signs of violence. There was no indication of forced entry. Nothing suggested a struggle had taken place inside the house. There were no suitcases packed. No clothing was laid out for travel. No written notes explaining a departure. Investigators noted that the home showed very little physical evidence. Almost no usable fingerprints were recovered. No clear traces pointed to when or how the family had left. Personal items remained inside. Wallets were still there. Identification cards had not been taken. Important documents were left behind. The children's belongings were still in the house. These details raised new questions. If the family had left voluntarily, they had done so without money, without identification, and without preparation. Phone records continued to draw attention. At least one late-night connection showed activity long after relatives believed the family had disappeared. A brief signal, then nothing. At one point, a voicemail originating from Joseph's phone was accidentally recorded. The message did not contain words. It captured background noise and then stopped. There was no explanation attached to it, no follow-up call. After that, the phone activity ended. The McStay family did not return calls. They did not retrieve their belongings, and they did not come back to the house in Fallbrook. What remained were records, timelines, and a growing absence that could no longer be explained by travel or miscommunication. For days, the McStay family appeared to have vanished without a trace. They had no contact with anyone they knew, but phone records told a different story. Investigators later reviewed cell tower data connected to Joseph McStay's phone. What they found did not match the idea of a short trip or a missed return. On February 6th, 2 days after the family was last believed to be at home, Joseph's phone connected to a cell tower far from Fallbrook. The signal came from the San Isidro area, near the United States-Mexico border. This was not a single error or background signal. The phone had moved. There was no record of Joseph McStay crossing the border. No confirmed sighting of Joseph, Summer, or their children in the area. And yet, the phone connected. Shortly afterward, the signal disappeared. For investigators, this marked a shift in how the disappearance was understood. Up until that point, the case centered on a home left behind and unanswered calls. Now, there was movement without witnesses. The phone's location suggested travel south, but no one could say who was carrying it or why. Relatives were informed that the signal did not come from Fallbrook or anywhere nearby. It came from a location over 100 miles away. This information raised new questions. If the family had left voluntarily, they had done so without telling anyone, without identification or their children's belongings, and without leaving a trace beyond a phone signal. If someone else had taken the phone, that raised a different set of questions. How had it been removed from the house? When? And by whom? No surveillance footage showed the family traveling that distance. No gas station cameras captured them. No hotel records placed them along the route. Only the phone registered the movement. Investigators could not determine how long the device remained active near the border. They could only confirm that the connection occurred and then stopped. After that, there were no more signals, no pings, no voicemail activity, no further contact of any kind. The McStay family had not reappeared, but their phones had briefly suggested a direction, and then nothing. As the investigation continued, attention returned to the phone records. Investigators reviewed the final known connections again and again. The signals pointed south, toward open land and border regions where records were limited and witnesses were few. There were no confirmed sightings of the McStay family in those areas, no verified encounters, no evidence placing them on the ground where the phones had connected. Only the signals existed. For relatives, the waiting became exhausting. Phones stayed close at night. Ringers turned up. Every vibration was checked immediately. Sleep became difficult. Some family members later described lying awake, listening for a sound that never came. Days passed without information. Then weeks. No calls or messages were returned. Time began to feel uneven. Hours passed slowly. The entire day disappeared without updates. Late at night, when phones rang unexpectedly, telemarketers, wrong numbers, automated calls, the sound alone was enough to stop conversations and pull attention to the screen. Each ring carried the same question, and each time, the answer was the same: nothing. Investigators continued following the limited physical trail that existed. Near the United States-Mexico border, authorities located the McStay family's vehicle, a white Isuzu Trooper. It had been abandoned. Inside the vehicle, there were no signs of a struggle. No personal items explained where the family had gone. No clear indication of when it had been left there. For a brief moment, the discovery suggested progress. A fixed location. A physical object tied directly to the family. But the vehicle did not lead to the McStays. There were no fingerprints that explained who had driven it. No surveillance footage shows who abandoned it. No evidence connecting the location to the family beyond ownership of the car. After that, the trail faded again. The phones are no longer connected. The vehicle offered no direction, and the house in Fallbrook remained empty. Weeks turned into months. Birthdays passed. Holidays arrived and ended. The McStay family did not reappear. What remained were unanswered calls, a vehicle left behind, and records that showed movement without explanation. And for those waiting, every ring of a phone continued to sound the same: brief, familiar, and unanswered. The McStay family had not been seen. Investigators continued reviewing records from the night the family disappeared. Phone metadata revealed anomalies. One late-night connection was recorded. The source of the call could not be traced to any known occupied location. It originated in an area without residences or businesses. The content of the call, a faint audio signal, contained sounds resembling voices, but nothing could be confirmed. No one could verify whether it came from the McStays or explain how or why the signal had been transmitted. The physical investigation offered no resolution. The house in Fallbrook remained empty. No trace of the family's presence was found beyond the items left behind. No personal effects had been taken. No notes had been left. The vehicle discovered near the border provided no new answers. No surveillance was placed on the family there. No fingerprints revealed who had moved it. The McStays were never recovered. Records show only absence. Calls made and unanswered. Phones that moved without bodies. No witnesses. No clear direction. In summary, no footsteps, signs of struggle or bodies. Just signals and then silence. The calls stopped. The phones are no longer connected. The family's disappearance remained unresolved. All that remained were records, phone logs, a home untouched, a vehicle was abandoned, and the memory of 4 people Joseph, Summer, Gianni, and Joseph Jr., who vanished without a trace. Years after the McStay family disappeared, their case remains open. Phone records show occasional pings from the family's numbers, not consistently, not predictably, but enough to appear in the logs long after the night they vanished. Officially, law enforcement now lists Joseph, Summer, Gianni, and Joseph Jr. as victims of homicide. The exact circumstances, when, where, and by whom, have never been determined. Investigators can confirm the disappearance and the outcome, but the path that led there remains unknown. Family members, in the months after the disappearance, kept careful track of every missed call. Some were time-stamped exactly when they had last tried calling the McStays. Other calls went unanswered, showing only that the phones had not been deactivated or destroyed immediately. Small details that hint at unanswered questions but provide no clear answers. It is a case that continues to puzzle authorities and the public alike. A family that vanished, leaving only their home, their belongings, and a trail of incomplete records. What do you think happened to the McStays? Could a family really disappear without a trace, leaving signals behind but no bodies? Or is there an explanation in the records that has yet to be found? Scroll down and leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the unanswered pings could mean? And how would you react if a loved one's phone kept ringing years after they disappeared? The story of the McStay family does not conclude with clear answers. It ends with absence, with mystery, and with the records that remain. No one saw them leave. No one knows where they went. And their phones, the last connection to the family, continue to echo their disappearance. And that's why, to this day, whenever a phone rings in Fallbrook at 8:28 p.m., some people still don't answer. So now, I want to ask you, what do you think happened to the McStay family? What would you do if you were in their place? Would you pick up the call or let it go to voicemail? Scroll down and leave your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think happened to the McStay family. If you've followed their story from the beginning, make sure to hit like and subscribe to Dark Hours Club for more true horror stories uploading every day, every missed call, every unanswered ring. A reminder that some stories do not end, and that the echoes of a single night can last far longer than anyone expects.